I'm sure in a perfect world you'd love to share revenue with every sport, but just what was the hardest decision in finding out, where to stop and just picking which sports you actually were going to share revenue with?
That's a good question. Yeah, you'd love to have every sport, right, share revenue with all of them. But part of that decision making was in concert with our increase in scholarship. So we didn't look at the investments into individual sports just from rev share. So many of the sports who didn't get rev share are obviously getting massive increases in scholarship investment. But at the end of the day, as we talked about earlier, most of this is a result of business thinking, right? Like, where can we spend money in rev share to grow competitive success, to drive additional revenue? So when you think about some of the sports that we've talked about, you think about volleyball and basketball's excess capacity at Reed, growing ticket revenue in there. Obviously football, very, very important. Baseball, softball as well. So we just tried to look at what sports are we driving revenue in, how do we need to maintain the current revenue, and how do we accelerate and advance it. So difficult decisions, and those can be adjusted and altered in the future, but that's how we chose to start.
Can you kind of touch on what you were just talking about in there, threading the needle between modernization and keeping tradition, especially in a place like Texas A&M?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're all facing in college athletics right now is the reality that what makes college athletics and university special is our traditions. It's like, that's what separates Texas A&M. There isn't a place in the country that is more proud, and rightfully so, of the traditions. The reality though is when change happens to you that you didn't instigate, you have a simple choice. You either adjust and adapt and modernize to that approach, or you don't. And you never stay the same in college athletics. You're either getting better or you're falling behind. And so I think at a place like Texas A&M, I think the most important thing to think through is how do you thread the needle between staying true to the traditions that make this place unique, and yet how do you modernize? And that's a hard thing. And that's why what we've tried to say is, let's make the North Star in all of our decision making what is in the best long-term interest of Texas A&M and Texas A&M athletics. Not any individual or organization, it's Texas A&M athletics. And so I think when you think that way, you can go too fast and modernize too fast and really put some of your traditions at risk, or you can be too slow. So that's why I don't do it all by myself. I work with a group of folks that are very, very helpful to me to understand, and I'm learning more. But I'm going to push hard on the modernization. I'm going to push hard on thinking differently, because I think if we don't, we won't have the business success that we need to ultimately fund the support of our programs to win.
And then overall, just how do you feel like the regulations that have come into place over the last couple of weeks will positively impact Texas A&M and maybe even be able to thrive in this new world?
Yeah, I think this is our time at Texas A&M. I think this is a perfect time for us. Obviously, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of challenge, but I think this is a time where things have just kind of fallen in place. We have great unity amongst our Board of Regents, our Chancellor's office, the President's office, and our coaching staff and administration. So we're working hard on unity of purpose. I think this is our chance to leverage the collective strength of Texas A&M, the Association of Former Students, everything that makes this place different. The scale of Texas A&M is our chief, advantage. And so this is our time. If we have the courage to make tough decisions and act and modernize in some of those areas that we talked about earlier, I think Texas A&M can separate and do things we've never done here before. That's why we're all here. You have an opportunity at Texas A&M to do things that most people can't do because of scale, because of resources, and other things.
We talked in there about how even in a lot of these new guardrails, there is some uncertainty. Is there anything beyond federal legislation that would provide a more solid foundation and get rid of some of these uncertainties?
It's a good question too, Travis. It's hard. I mean, one of the things that we really wanted is for each institution basically to sign the document that says they agree to adhere to these rules. That's a step in the right direction. We've never had that before. But there are certain things, certain student athlete protections. Obviously, there's the employee sort of conversation out there that we really do need some federal support and help. Getting a 10-year injunction from Judge Wilkin is really, really helpful. But it's not all the way there. And so as you can probably think through the challenges with Congress and how divided that is right now, it's been a challenge for us. But we're making incremental progress and making necessary steps. We're going to continue advocating, on the Hill for some support, and I know the House is more involved now, looking at trying to craft a document. We don't need broad, antitrust exemptions. We need a skinny NIL bill that will basically do the fundamental foundations of what we need to be able to not live in a litigious environment every single day where we're getting sued constantly and we're playing defense. We need to get back on playing offense in college athletics, right? Like we all got into this to help young people. And we've spent all of our time playing defense to lawsuits, and that needs to end. It's not in the best interest. College athletics is worth saving. It's really important to the fabric of America. Like, we're better than this, and it's time for leaders to lead.
There were so many questions that couldn't be answered before the settlement was approved, but now that it has been approved, just what are your coaches asking you now these past few weeks since its approval?
Well, I just think, they want clarity. Look, they're uncomfortable. And some of them are thrilled because, look, if we're successful with this new entity, coaches are actually going to go back to doing three things: recruiting, developing, and coaching. What a novel concept. The last 3 years, they've been out begging people for donor money to go buy, acquire, or retain talent in their roster. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Mike Elko every year didn't have to just worry about recruiting the next class, but trying to keep the one he's already got? I mean, so I sense, in some respects, a sigh of relief. On the other, is this really going to work? And I think so. It's got to be better than what it's been. And that's the thing we've talked about a lot as a committee. Is look, let's not be defensive when either media members or others rightly point out things that we didn't do very well. It's okay. We weren't perfect. But let's make sure we're making progress towards a durable system that actually has rules, that enforces the rules, and it's something that brings stability and fairness to college athletics. That's what we want.
How does being at Texas A&M unique to kind of the aftermath of the settlement? I mean, how would you feel any differently if you're still at Omaha or at another institution?
Well, yeah, I mean, every place is different, right? I suppose if you were the athletic director at the University of Nebraska Omaha in the Summit League, you'd be thinking hard about, do we want to opt into the system? I mean, is this realistic for us? Do we have the resources? I mean, just because somebody opts in doesn't mean they're going to spend $20.5 million, right? They may spend $2 million. But when you opt in, there's going to be fees associated with being part of this entity. What are those fees? I'm sure they have a lot of questions. Part of the challenge for a lot of the other institutions is many of the questions they rightly had couldn't be addressed publicly because anything we did publicly created new objections to the settlement. And the most important thing that we could have gotten done is getting it actually settled. So I don't want to speak for any of my colleagues or others. All I can tell you is Texas A&M should be, and I believe is, well positioned to navigate through the challenge. And going into it, we talked with our coaches and basically said, no matter what happens, we're going to be okay. And I believe Texas A&M can be more than just okay. I think we can be elite. We need to chase it. We need to have the courage to unabashedly say, this is our time, and we're going to go get it done. We got the right people. We got great coaches. They're in it for the right reason. They want to be here. And we need to circle them with support and love and care and go do it together.
While this settlement does give you some answers, it does feel like a lot of the additional situation is still fluid. So what do you find for Texas A&M specifically to be some of the bigger challenges you have to tackle as you kind of figure out what this looks like?
Yeah, I think, again, just speaking honestly, I do think part of the big challenge here is threading the needle between modernization and what our traditions are. And look, it's going to be different now, not just at Texas A&M, but much of what we've grown up with, all of us, that we believed is turned upside down. This is a whole different deal. I mean, you think about all these different, I think, you think about the NFL and the Lakers were just sold, right, for $10 billion. Well, Forbes had the Cowboys valuation as $10 billion. It's probably more like $20 billion. Well, if we're now in the business of paying players and through rev share, what's Texas A&M's valuation? I bet it's a lot. And how do we think differently in terms of the business of Texas A&M athletics now, while still not losing our focus on the support? That's why I gave you the GPAs of our student athletes. I think for me, those are the big challenges, because you're trying to move people donors, everybody associated away from a model that isn't going to be that way anymore. And the quicker we can adjust and adapt, we don't have to love it. There's a lot of our key stakeholders, including myself, that some of this stuff I don't like. But guess what? It is what it is. Let's go win. Let's find a way to win. And that's what we're focused on.
With the NIL Go system, if you ever had a athlete who didn't want to disclose beforehand, or that, is it the school's job to help push them in the direction? How do you handle a situation like that where an athlete may not want to follow the system?
Well, that's a good point, and I think the one thing that we can do is I suppose we can't force certain things, but I think part of that's the educational process of understanding that you can choose not to submit that, but we still have an eligibility issue then, right? So be very careful about not doing that, because in the end, then you may not be eligible to play. And so some of those types of rules and things, there's going to be a lot of rules, some of which we don't even have yet, Travis, that are going to come out. We'll do a better job of being able to, there's going to be some FAQs and all this broad communication. Again, I just really believe that the system will be much better off the more transparent we can be, because it'll create confidence and trust from the public, the media, and actually the students themselves. And now there's limits to that. And so we have, legally there's limits to that, but there are ramifications of people who choose to knowingly do things that will ultimately cost them eligibility, and will have a direct tie to a negative penalty to the institution too.
Anything else? All right, Trev, you